I mean, I'm into true crime drama, and I'm pitching something, and I know you married a true crime writer.
Yes, I did.
And
I married a crime fighter.
I mean, it's pretty. Was that one of the biggest appeals? Is you loved her mind? You loved what was it about Michelle?
It was definitely her way of. I need more facts before I make a judgment on this. I'm very much snap judgment. Very oftentimes the wrong hot take because I get very emotional, and she's like, "Let's wait till we get more facts on this, dude," because she was just very much about. There are angles to this that we don't know.
Like Making a Murderer kind of thing. She would have definitely said, just wait.
Oh, yeah. Watching Making a Murderer with her, watching the interrogation scene of that kid, the kid that was like, I'm going to miss WrestleMania. Remember when they're
and you're like, why don't they let him go? He doesn't even know what he's talking about.
And because she knew a lot of homicide cops and knew, and she was like crawling out of her skin like, this guy needs to be fired. Everything he's doing right now is illegal. There were moments that she would, you watched because she was there kind of at the beginning of the building of the true crime infrastructure. And there was a lot of bad actors in that. You know, like she obsessively watched Nancy Grace because she's like, I cannot believe anyone in law enforcement would go on this show.
Yeah.
She is the worst human being, and she's the worst for talking about crimes. Like if you have a detective or a sheriff or whomever on and they go, hey, don't talk about these aspects because we need those to be not in the press because we're trying to catch the person. And she would always blurt them out. And you would see these guys like, what the fuck are you doing? You know? And
they'd still go on.
And it was just like these people and early on, her website, True Crime Diary, she got calls from different cable shows like, can we have you on and use it? She goes, I don't want my debut to be on the Geraldo Rivera show and have it be all this sensationalized shit. I actually want this to be, you know. And so the first time she was never on camera, but Dateline called her because she had basically put together a case about a Mormon black widow who had been killing all of her husbands. But because this was before true crime podcasts and true crime blogging were considered a thing, the family was like, we're not talking to ABC. We're not talking to networks. Are you kidding? And then she's like, well, I'm just a blogger. Oh yeah, we'll talk to you, whatever. And then she got the family to talk about all this stuff and, you know, it got them to tell their side of the story on her site. And then Dateline called her and goes, can we fly you to Utah and have you talk to these people again? And because she uncovered all this stuff that they couldn't get them to talk about. And she did? Yeah, she did. She flew out there and then she prepped, who's the guy? The narrator. Come on.
Dennis. No, not Dennis. Well, it was another night like any other night.
Like any other.
Keith Morrison.
Yeah. She had to prep him and like work with him. Yeah. And it was, which is like,
what a fun kind of crazy world.
And she was also, she was using back then, because again, the infrastructure wasn't there. She was using Google Maps. She was using people's MySpace pages and people's like, I don't think cops quite yet realize what a treasure trove. Now they do. But back then they're like, I'm not going on the internet. That's for fucking teenage girls. Like, no, people are admitting to shit on their MySpace blogs that they wouldn't admit. I don't think you realize what is happening on the internet right now.
Wow.
You know, for the longest time, she was beside herself because I think until recently, the San Francisco Police Department had one computer terminal. Everything else was all analog. And she goes, you can't do this. You need to update this shit because that's how you can catch people now. People will post things on the internet that they would never reveal in a interrogation or even to their friends.
She had that much insight. She knew.
Well, it wasn't that, yes, she had the insight, but she also just saw it happening over and over again. Like, this motherfucker just wrote about this crime on his MySpace blog because he thinks no one's reading it.
Right.
And it's right there, you know? But she would also do things that gets back to let me get more information. She cracked this other case really early on about this guy that was killing people on a beach. And when you heard, you know, like people were camping on the beach and this guy walked down and shot him with a rifle. But then she drove up to the beach and walked the beach and then saw that, this beach is extremely rocky. It is very treacherous. You have to go. It's very treacherous to get to the pretty part where you can camp. So whoever's carrying a heavy rifle down here, it's not some random weirdo shooting people. This is an experience outdoor, and then she started investigating that way and then put it but she actually walked the beach and go, well, this is different then. This isn't what I thought it was. It has to be this other kind of person.
She could have been a
this.
detective.
She absolutely could have been a detective.
Wow.
Absolutely. And she would have me, she would go, I would do comedy at the Christmas party for the LAPD homicide division and do a set for them so that she could sit with all the homicide cops and just grill them all night.
She just loved it.
She loved it.
She wrote this book about the Golden State Killer.
Yes.
And what was the book called?
I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
And unfortunately, she passed before the book came out.
She passed right before she could finish it.
And you said, I'm finishing this.
It has to be finished because she basically put together, not only did she put together what the case kind of was, she didn't name the killer, she didn't know who it was, but she did say maybe use familial DNA on this, which is how they cracked the case. But she also, it's one of the best portraits of the true crime obsessive mind and how it, and it's, I think a lot of homicide cops that have read it have told me, yeah, it is sort of a pathology that we have. It is a calling that we are drawn to want to find out things. Her production company was called Tell Me Productions. I have to know. Somebody knows. Somebody out there knows, and I got to find out. And it's a pathology, and it drives you, but it's what makes a great homicide detective, and it's what brings justice to people, not closure. Michelle hated the term closure. She also hated the phrase "everything happens for a reason." No, it doesn't. No, it's random as shit.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound very dark, but I've had other homicide cops go, "Well, she's right." She came up with the name the Golden State Killer. Because before then, she thought up that name. And the reason she thought it up was he was originally called the East Area Rapist, EAR. And then he was called, when he moved down to around Irvine, he was called the Original Night Stalker, based on some dumb interview that a guy gave. So he was called Ear/Ons.
What was his name?
Joseph.
Look it up.
Someone research it. But she goes, one of the reasons this case went cold is he doesn't have a cool name. He's not Night Stalker, Zodiac, that brands it and keeps it in the imagination. And so and a lot of homicide cops were like, thank you for doing that, because the case went cold because we didn't have a cool name.
Really?
Yeah. She gave him a cool name, and it made it very, very fun when he was caught. And there's footage of press conferences with the police. They're being asked, did the work of Michelle McNamara have anything to do with capturing? And he goes, this one guy goes, Michelle McNamara's work had nothing to do with the capture of the Golden State Killer. And I'm just like, you just used the name that she
called it the Golden State.
That's the thing that helped put it back in the news.